PL lenses on your iPhone? Yes. Look no further. This is the Tilta Khronos Cine adapter.
You're watching CineD, supported by B&H and CVP.
Welcome from NAB 2026. I'm here at the Tilta booth with Nick again. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Also doing really well. You guys keep coming out with innovative stuff. We know the Khronos ecosystem, so it's basically taking iPhone filmmaking seriously in a way that you can accessorize your iPhone if you use it as a proper filmmaking device, which it can be, of course, because we have Apple Log, we have now even the ability to record ProRes RAW externally. You can get time code. You can output HDMI via HDMI with the Blackmagic ProDock and so on. So pretty comprehensive, and you're accessorizing that. But now you came up with this next generation kind of, or like an additional thing,
Yeah.
and that's Khronos Cine.
Yeah. So Khronos Cine is kind of the bridge between our traditional Khronos ecosystem and kind of like a small DSLR, cage or kind of built-out camera. So the idea is similar to the Khronos, ecosystem. The phone and the case kind of snaps into this, but it can still be your regular everyday phone. The case is still, an everyday case. A lot of the people who work with us are using it regularly. But then you also have this. You have the expander that lets you use E-mount or PL lenses, connect battery plates, kind of get all your power and I/O ports, and use it more traditionally like a camera, especially when using more specialty lenses or anything like a zoom, things that the iPhone maybe is not the best at.
So what exactly are we looking at? So basically, this looks almost like a Komodo, I would say, or as if that was the camera, but that's not the camera, right? We're still, the image we're seeing is recorded by the iPhone.
Yes. So this is just the adapter. The iPhone slots into the back of the adapter, and this functions a lot like a projection lens. You are getting the image from the lens instead of going to a sensor. It's being mapped in a way that it can be captured perfectly by the phone's lens. So you're getting not just the depth from the lens itself, but also from additional glass elements in between the adapter and the lens.
So even though the adapter looks like a camera, it is just an optical device, right?
That is correct. Yeah, exactly. So it kind of helps, they're only able to do so much with the size of the iPhone lens in terms of getting the feeling of having glass in front of the sensor. So outside of the fun, anamorphic, vintage, whatever kind of lenses you want to put on this, you also just get more of the feeling of the lens and the glass, which, the iPhone kind of like sometimes can feel a little off, especially when used narratively.
So what kind of field of view am I getting if I use the Khronos Cine adapter?
So this is going to be comparable to full frame, specifically the Alexa Mini LF. So if you're using a lens that can cover, obviously you can punch in a little bit and you can adjust whether you're doing open gate on the iPhone, or not. But yeah, you can get a pretty similar field of view to the Alexa Mini LF.
Okay, so very interesting. I mean, who do you see using this? Because of course you kind of lose the advantage of having a small setup as you often would want to have with your iPhone. But again, we see more and more phones being used on productions as additional cameras. Is this something where you would use a lens for, like on a phone every now and then? Or is this for you something that could replace a proper camera rig?
So I think it can be used in a lot of different ways. The main one I would say is that for shoots that are already utilizing multiple iPhones, a strength of the iPhone is how small they are, but you don't always need that for every shot. If you're shooting two over the shoulders of people talking and you want to get a kind of more intimate feel, putting a zoom lens on that, on two phones on tripods is kind of the best way to do that. And the phone, you're either putting it closer to the actors or you're using a tighter lens, and that always doesn't have the best resolution. This is using the best lens on the phone itself, and then you throw a zoom lens on there, not to mention adding a motor, being able to optically zoom. Again, not every scene maybe calls for that, but having this in addition to a couple of other handheld iPhones, I think is kind of its primary focus. It's also a good learning tool if you are shooting on the phone and looking to kind of learn how to build up, a more traditional cinema camera. It uses all the same base plates, top handles, battery plates as any other of our systems. So if maybe something like the FX3 is too big of a jump, you already have your phone, you may be swapping it out every few years anyways. So this is a way that you could kind of invest in a system that gets you a little bit closer to that, but without putting in the full money for a large camera. And then I think lastly, a lot of things are shooting phones, but still need the ability to run wireless video to monitors, to be able to like have very specific focus marks, and they like the easy delivery of the iPhone, the fact that you can get manageable video files with pretty good color, but still it needs a little bit more than just like a flimsy clamp on a tripod. So I think this is kind of like an in-between option for a lot of stuff, and if anything from our previous Khronos experiences taught us that people were looking at rigging it out in larger ways, and the previous system is a great system, especially for handheld shooting. But when you do try to get it on a dolly, like we did for our X-Skiff shoot, something like this I think would have been useful just to have more options, especially creatively.
How do the lens characteristics change from what I'm used to if I use a Super 35 or full frame camera with this lens? Like how, like can I still pull focus the same way? Do I have a fake depth of field, which is similar to a larger sensor or not?
So it definitely replicates the feeling of a depth of field. I wouldn't say it's 100% one-to-one. It's similar to other adapters, or if you remember the old school depth of field adapters for like the old broadcast cameras, it still has the effect, but at the end of the day, it is still an iPhone. So I wouldn't say this would completely change what you're used to shooting, but it is definitely a step up, and I think it's a good middle ground between the look of the phone but then taking in more of the characteristics of the lens you're using. So if you're using a pretty clean lens, you might not notice a huge difference outside of maybe a sharper optical quality, but if you're using something vintage, using something fun, you're definitely going to get a cool hybrid look that I think people are always looking for, trying to find a look that doesn't feel like it's been used 1,000 times. And I think putting interesting lenses on the iPhone, the same way you would put interesting lenses on your traditional camera. Like that's kind of a big staple of filmmaking. And I think as the iPhone and smartphone kind of shooting, world grows, like I think the more options you have, like the more opportunity for cool stuff.
I think it's just a testament to how great the quality from phones is now, that it's really, like you don't have to waste a second thought whether the quality is good enough to integrate it, because it is good enough. The only limiting thing is basically the fixed lens and the small sensor, right? So, and you're trying to work away the small kind of lens, right? You're just changing the field of view with this adapter. But you mentioned that you mentioned actually vintage, older adapters that we used to use many years ago, before DSLRs, for broadcast cameras, that were actually working with a rotating ground glass. So, but this one doesn't work with a ground glass, right?
Not that I'm aware of. I actually do not know the exact specifics of how it's projecting its image. I believe it is similar, though. It might not be exactly, so I wouldn't say that, verbatim. But yeah, I think it's trying to get the most of it. I mean, it's making the sensor seem larger, in comparison. So you are getting some of those effects. But I would look at it more as like enhancing the iPhone as opposed to like one-to-one. The depth of field from a large sensor is still something pretty unique that is hard to replicate. But if you have the ability to support the added weight, which I think a lot of iPhone shoots still do, then this is a way to get that little bit extra that really helps differentiate the phones.
If I buy this, do I need to worry about when Apple upgrades the phone that it will still be compatible with it, like next year's or this year's iPhone 18?
So the philosophy for our cases is that all of the accessories that you buy will work with the cases over time. So you most likely will need to swap out your phone case, for the next model. But the idea behind those previous ones should carry over to this, in terms of like, unless there's any crazy alignment issue, I'm almost positive we'll make an adapter that allows this to continue to be usable for whatever phone you're making. So whether or not that's something that attaches to the case, or if it's a different back plate that swaps out, it should be relatively affordable, and definitely not something where this is the Khronos Cine for only iPhone 17. The idea with most of our stuff is to be as universal. So I would be surprised if we did not have a way to integrate this with our Samsung Galaxy as well, because that's the newest phone we're supporting. And as we kind of expand, I imagine we'll make more universal options, or maybe ways for people to kind of fine tune whatever it is that they're mapping to this. Maybe try some cool combinations of like, not just smartphones, but it's projecting an image that is lining up to a lens. So there theoretically are some cool possibilities for.
Awesome. I mean, this is still a prototype. Do you have any information on pricing and availability yet?
They're estimating around 500. That definitely can change depending on the exact kind of final design of the glass and like how they go about it.
And when?
We're hoping before the end of the year. The best estimate I've heard right now is the third quarter, but that'll probably be something where we start taking orders towards the end of the third quarter, maybe shipping early fourth quarter.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. There's a lot of other cool stuff to check out at the Tilta booth in case you are still in town or want to come to Vegas. There's the autofocus adapter, which is alive and well here. And what else?
Autofocus adapter, we have our motorized boulder cart, which we're showing properly for the first time. A lot of small accessories, new stuff for the Osmo Pocket 4. Honestly, there's a lot of little things kind of sprinkled around, which are fun to see. But the main ones, new Nucleus M accessories, those we've been taking orders for already, the pre-orders for the adapters. It's all stuff that's kind of readily available, nothing too surprising. Khronos Cine is the big kind of fresh reveal of the year.
Awesome. And where did you get it? On CineD. Thanks for your time, Nick, and have a good rest of the show as well. And thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned to CineD for a lot more from NAB 2026. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.